Good morning. Good morning. How are you doing? Hope you're all fit and well. Let me start with the important news of the day. It's my wife's birthday. Yeah, it is Ruth's birthday today. She's 36 for the 23rd time or something. Many happy returns. I don't suppose for one moment she's actually watching this, but many happy returns to her. I know we did have a few messages to say precisely that. There's Gary Muirhead way back at 9:20, 40 minutes before we came on air. Good morning, gang. Just in case I don't get a chance to tune into the show this morning, I'd like to I'd like to wish Mrs. Demolition News, Ruth Anthony, very happy birthday. Thanks very much indeed for that, Gary. And Dan did exactly the same. 9:56. So many happy returns. Dan is actually busy at the moment, but listening. It's the best show on the planet. Oh wait, it's the only demolition show on the planet. All of this is true. Chris says, "Happy birthday, Ruth." Many thanks indeed for that, Chris. Who else do we have in our midst? I saw other people going through the chat. There's Gary. He did manage to make it. Mark Whiting is here as well. I've mentioned Chris Ford. I think that's it of our usual suspects. Good morning to everybody over on Instagram as well. Nice and busy over there, which is always a nice thing to see. Got another packed show for you today. I tell you what, rather than telling you about it, how about we actually get on with it? Without further ado, let me roll the intro, post the question of the day, and get this show on the road. It is Thursday, the 17th of July. Welcome to the Break Fast Sow. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition, the Lord High Chancellor of live streaming. In today's show, I went off to Germany the other day to see the Volvo electric demolition site. Well, today we're going to bring you the full story. We've shown you a few highlights, but today we bring you the full story. Curves and contours. Not of that kind, the sort that you have on a landscape. Those are made easy with Leica. Earth-moving success, don't worry, there's a cat app for that. And Hyundai puts on a show in the United Arab Emirates. Plus, in Mark's morning monologue today, an overdose of rules. An overdose of rules. That's what we're doing today. No mystery machine, I'm afraid, but I am going to very quickly remind you of today's question of the day, which looks like this. Yep, yet again, our question of the day today comes once again from our resident quizmaster, Mr. Gary Muirhead, and his question is this. Of all the skills that you possess, and I'm listen, I'm looking out into your eyes, which I can't do, but you get the idea. I realise that you are a very skillful bunch, but what is a skill that you possess that is the closest thing you have to a superpower? That's what we'd like to know. Mine's pretty easy. I've been writing pretty much daily for well over 35 years now. Never once have I suffered from writer's block. Never once have I failed to write something that I set out to write. Always see it through to the bitter end. Now, obviously, there's been some good articles along the way, stuff that really resonates. There's also been some crap too, but even superheroes have an off day every once in a while. But what is yours? What is a skill that you possess that is the closest thing you have to a superpower? Chris Ford. The ability to fuck up. Yeah, that would be my second superpower, I have to say. Going to say good morning to Wayne Edwards over on Instagram, Colin Slater over on Instagram as well, and also to Garvin, Mostly Diggers, also over on Instagram. Keep those answers coming in. We'd like to know what is a skill that you possess that is the closest thing you have to a superpower. While you're thinking about that, let me get the show underway properly. I'm glad I read all of this because Dan's superpower apparently is using his fingertips. Great for feeling hydraulics. He's talking about operating machines here, men and ladies. That's what he's talking about. Jonathan Duras has just arrived as well with a big thumbs up. Morning, Jonathan. Good of you to join us. Thank you very much indeed for being here. Now, you may recall that I found myself stranded over in Frankfurt not so long ago. I'd been to see an all-electric demolition site. Now, I've already given you my take on it, which was, very, very quick, and I was impressed, obviously. But we're going to go behind the scenes now. We're going to talk to the people that actually made it happen, including Michael Metzner of the demolition contractor and my mate Thomas from Volvo, who supplied the machines. So sit back and enjoy this for the next 2 minutes and 41 seconds. This is the full story of the world's first all-electric demolition site.
My name is Michael Metzner and I'm from the company Metzner Recycling from Frensdorf near Bamberg. At the Volvo Demolition Days with Peter Bauer, I have the feeling that Volvo have the same spirit for the future.
We had a meeting in the last year in a demolition event at Volvo in Eskilstuna, talked about collaboration together that grows and grows and grows. And then we had all the companies like Siemens, Metzner, Volvo, Husqvarna come a bit later, I guess. For me, it's also not really a question, shall we compare diesel with electric? For me, it's more, do we want to have a CO2 neutral solution, yes or no? If you compare it all the time and say, okay, now I will go back to diesel, I think that is not the approach here. It's more, okay, that's CO2 neutral, you can work in a different way as before, and that's it, more or less, I think.
Yeah, there you are. That's the full story. Hope you enjoyed that. I know Dan Cullen did. He just said, great video. Thank you for I don't say thank you. I mean, I held the camera for a few bits of it. All of the fancy nonsense was Fred's handiwork. But yeah, very good one. Thoroughly enjoyed doing it. Even though I got trapped in Germany, still look back on that one fondly. And when the world does turn electric, I'll be able to say, yes, I was there at the beginning. Let's crack on, shall we? Because we're talking cat apps in a moment after this.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
There was a time when, if you'd have asked anyone in the demolition or construction industry what their favourite tool was, they may have reached for a spanner or a wrench or a sledgehammer or something like that. These days, they're just as likely to reach for their phone. Caterpillar app incoming.
Cat Central is the gateway to what's coming in the future. And none of us know the future, but it will come via Cat Central.
Empire is a relationship-based company. So my job is not about selling parts. It's about building relationships, just taking care of the client, right?
And we feel that. We suffered hard times in 2008 where we pretty much sold our whole fleet. Before 2008, our fleet was mostly new. When we came back with older machines that we knew that we could keep running. And that's our style now. And Cat Central doesn't discriminate on age. The old are taken care of as well as the shiny ones. And so it's really streamlined our ability to keep old stuff running. All three of our techs are completely comfortable with Cat Central.
I use Cat Central typically every day. It's made it a lot easier to order parts, to find parts, to look up machine locations, capacities.
Cat Central allows me to order parts on the go, whether I'm here, on the job, anywhere.
Getting information on the parts, looking up diameter, sizes, and sometimes just a general description of what the part is, so it will help for troubleshooting or finding out what you need.
You know, every Cat part has a part number on it. They can go in and search that with their machine, find out what else is involved to do the repair.
Once I mention the fault code, I get the aha moment. People look up, they're like, wait, what? And then they pull out their phone, they download it, and then they're really interested.
I can look up the fault codes right there. It gives me a quick overview that I can see. It's just easier to have it all on one screen, all at the same time.
I don't use the parts books very often. Before, it was a phone call, then I would have to look up the parts. And so it could be an hour or two before we knew whether or not we could continue with a repair the next day. The parts books have been left in the dust.
If you have the part and you know the part number, you can just type it in the quick order and it's ordered in a couple of seconds.
Cat Central saves us a significant amount of time.
A lot of clients are surprised at just how easy it is to use.
I find it pretty easy to use. Everything on the home screen's all there and it's easy to scroll through.
Everybody wants quick, easy, and convenient, and that's what the app is. It's just taking all the tools and resources that Cat has and put it into one place so that it can help clients be successful.
The OMM is a great feature. Clients like that. They're clicking on that. They love the fact that they can go in and see their CVAs, and then they love the QR code. So they can scan the QR code in the cab of their machine, and then it gives them the most popular parts for that machine. They know that they're getting that verified fit, check mark, and they know that that's the part that they need. So they feel confident. It definitely takes the guesswork out of purchasing.
Locations is kind of a big thing for us because sometimes people say, hey, we need you to fix this machine at this job. Well, you don't know exactly where that job is.
My route planning is a big thing here. Traffic's bad. So if I know I can go this way first and hit this one, then loop around to get to my second machine, it helps my day.
It streamlines the whole process of getting from point A to point B.
In a couple of instances where somebody's phone isn't working, we've been able to share carts and send carts versus, somebody's looking up something. I can add it to my cart, send it over.
They're digitally inclined. They're ready to go with it.
I feel like Caterpillar is definitely pushing that envelope when it comes to, technology.
Cat Central will have aspects added to it that we haven't thought of yet.
It's definitely a gateway and a hub to other applications.
Having all access to everything on my phone is so much easier than pulling the laptop out, logging on the laptop. I can just got all there in my hand. I think it's best in class.
The right result in the quickest amount of time is kind of like the name of the game.
Yeah, like to be fast.
Yeah, Garvin over on Mostly Diggers on Instagram just said, crikey, that's a powerful bit of tech infrastructure. I particularly like the fact that it's sort of backward compatible. So you older machines, you can still use it. Let's have a look. Is that available in the UK? Says Dan. I actually don't know the answer to that, but I would say 99.99% yes, it almost certainly is. Bearing in mind it's an app that's got the Caterpillar part numbers on it. Why would you not? I'm sure that is available here in the UK. Ken Hatcher saying Cat shares doing well and good dividend. I think Fred's got a few Cat shares, funnily enough, just so you know. And according to Ken, yes, it is available in the UK. There you are. Going back to, I was talking about tools just a moment ago, and Dan says my favourite tool was the Vice Grip. It was called Man's Best Friend. Man's Best Friend is actually sat under my desk at the moment, but I take your point. We've got plenty more to come. In fact, we're talking curves and contours in a moment, which we don't do very often. Back after that.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
There is some dissent in the ranks about vice grips, because Chris Phillips just said, Dan, the vice grip is the fitter's worst enemy. The number of bolts I've had to drill out over the years because someone has rounded a bolt off with one. There you are. And it's the question of the day. Yeah, master of the fuck up. Curves and contours, says Garvin over at Mostly Diggers. Are you talking about demolition? Not today. No, not today. But listen, we do like a curve and a contour, regardless of where it comes from. So yes, let's go talk Leica. We've got about 3.5 minutes of this, so sit back and enjoy. This is how you put curves and contours into your landscaping, the technological way.
We are in Chateau Double, working on the construction of a pump track. This unique project involves creating a hybrid track that combines elements of BMX and a traditional bump course. The complexity of this project lies in the curvy design of the track and the creation of multiple bumps. This equipment behind me is called Liebherr 924 and it is fitted with a Leica 3D machine control system. We opted for the semi-automatic option because precision is essential for this type of work. Without machine control, we would have needed numerous stakes, topographic orbs, and we could not reach the precision needed for this job.
Here, without a guiding system, I believe the surveyors would have already been scratching their heads.
For the colleagues working on the site, particularly for the operator, it would have been a forest of stakes, which would have been very complicated to navigate through, whereas now he is free to move around.
Here, without machine control, it would have been impossible to follow the complex design with a machine like that.
The operator receives real-time information, ensuring smooth progress in the construction. As surveyors, we are able to save a significant amount of time with this technology. For instance, we only need to be present on the job site to place the base points and ensure that the model is functioning properly.
We are able to control everything from the cab. We can set the lines, choose the different views. It's simple and easy to use.
Already at Groupe Cheval, all of our machines are semi-automatic.
Here we have a Liebherr Generation 8 machine which can very easily accept semi-automatic functionality.
This solution ensures operator comfort and boosts productivity thanks to the semi-automatic feature.
Its performance makes all the difference on this kind of complex site. It's not me saying it, it's the operator.
Yes, it simplifies life because, as I say, there's no stakeouts, you don't get off the machine, you do everything from the cab, so it's much simpler.
It's a real advantage to have this kind of functionality. Traditionally, Leica Geosystems has been known for its total stations and surveying technology, but since 2 decades we offer state-of-the-art machine control solutions that are worth exploring, along with dedicated support from our team. It's essential to ensure that the service our customers receive matches the quality of the solutions we provide.
In regards to our experience with Leica Geosystems, we found their sales team to be highly responsive and understanding of our specific requirements. They provided solutions that aligned perfectly with our needs. We also had an operator who had no prior experience with machine control systems. He undergo a day of training and he was able to fully embrace the system and utilized it effectively. The training was top-notch, leaving him completely satisfied.
I had very good training when we got the machine.
When it comes to technical issues or remote support, they have a very efficient support system with a very rapid response.
Placing our customers first is our top priority, and support is crucial in ensuring their operations run smoothly.
In 3 words, why we choose Leica Geosystems: flexibility, ease of use, time and productivity savings.
That was a lot more than 3 words, pal. But yeah, good video. Good video. Enjoyed that. Jonathan Duras saying the same. Gary Muirhead saying exactly the same thing. GPS and tilt rotator, a perfect combination. According to Ken, he always finds it 50 mil out of position. Maybe I'm too perfect. Ken, we've all long thought that you're too perfect. And speaking of Ken, we were talking about the Cat Central app a moment ago with that video that we showed you from the States. There you are. You can actually download it today. Now, obviously, that is the Apple link. You can go and get the Cat Central app today. I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is absolutely available on Android, because why would it not be? Now, obviously, we have some experts in our midst here of all things GPS and tilt rotator, but we also have an expert in our midst on BMX riding. Yes, we do. Mr. Wolf, good morning to you. That looks like a fun track. I wouldn't mind riding that on one of my BMXs. Using machine control tools to build the complex profiles you have on BMX berms really helps. I know the specialist BMX track builder, Clark and Kent, here in the UK, uses machine control. Trimble, I think. You see, when Mike is not being a superstar journalist with global highways, yes, you'll often find him on with a crash helmet on, riding a BMX. And I'm not talking about riding a BMX through the streets looking a bit ridiculous. I'm talking like competitive, jumping in the air and all that thing. Yeah, Mike does that. Ken says he's been using the Cat app. What do you make of it, Ken? What do you use it for instantly? Just let us know in the chat. Love to hear from you on that. And Dan says there's a great track in Gloucestershire near the A417. Has Mike Wolf visited the A417 BMX track? I wonder. Because I think he does travel. We're going to be back in just a moment with the last of our shows. We're actually going off to the United Arab Emirates. I have trouble with that. I won't say it again. I'm going to call it the UAE. Back after this. Yeah, most of the show has been largely informative video clips. We're going to finish the show today with something purely for entertainment. Sit back and enjoy this.
Building a comfortable tomorrow.
There you are. Hyundai in the UAE. Going back to the chat, Dan Cullen says that this BMX track in Gloucester was recently redone. Mike Wolf has not visited it. He was racing at Bexhill last Sunday, though, and yes, I do travel around the UK to ride and race. There you are. Way fitter than I am, even though we're the same age. That's annoying. And he's still got all his hair as well. That's even more annoying. Morning, Mike. Ken Hatcher, going back to the cat app. What do you use it for? Looking up filter part numbers for a friend's cat? There you are. According to Chris Ford, Collins Earthworks have bought a JCB 370X, and I'm sure they'll have great fun with it. I have to say, mightily impressed with that. And Gary Muirhead, lowering the tone just a little, says, I've got a fantastic cat app on my machine. It warns me when there's a pussy coming towards my excavator. Gary, how often does that happen? How often are you attracting a pussy to your excavator? Well, obviously, we're talking cats here. That's why it's a cat app. Right, that pretty much wraps up the main part of this morning's show. I'm going to roll the outro before leaping gazelle-like over into my morning monologue. If you can't stick around for that, please stay safe. Look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. Hope to see you again very soon. Tomorrow would be good because it is the last show of the week. But if you do have the time and the inclination, I will be back immediately after. I'd like to tell you a little story about my father-in-law. Back in the mid-1970s, he contracted tuberculosis. No one was entirely sure, but the doctors suggested he might have picked it up from drinking raw milk when he lived on a farm as a child. Anyway, as a result of that TB, he initially lost one kidney. Over the course of the next 50 or so years, his remaining kidney gradually ceased to function, and for the last year of his life, he was on dialysis. The loss of that kidney function came with side effects. His doctor placed him on a course of tablets to take care of what he called his waterworks. But those tablets made him constipated. He was prescribed a pill to ease the constipation, which it did, but it also gave him gout. The doctor prescribed a treatment for his gout, which worked well. His gout was gone. But now he had what the doctors called restless leg syndrome, his legs constantly twitching and spasming, particularly at night. As a result of that, he couldn't sleep, so the doctor prescribed sleeping tablets. They gave him a good night's sleep. They also gave him severe migraine-level headaches. He was offered painkillers to ease the headaches, but they were discovered to counteract his heart medication. At no point was he summoned to the doctor's surgery or to the hospital to go back to basics, to treat the original symptoms. Instead, a new layer of medication was used to pave over the cracks. Doctor after doctor, pill after pill, side effect upon side effect. My father-in-law passed away earlier this year. And by the time he did so, he was taking 18 tablets a day, the majority of the pills seemingly to counteract the effects of another pill. Now, at this point, you'd be fully justified in asking what the hell I'm talking about my father-in-law's medical treatment. Thankfully, the answer to that is very straightforward. Replace my father-in-law with the demolition and construction industry and replace all those pills, potions, medicines, and lotions with legislation. Remedy upon remedy, each piled one upon the next. Some counteract and contradict, some are there purely to address the side effects of something prescribed previously. Allow me to offer you a few examples. Most demolition will require some form of planning permission and prior approval. Demolition contractors don't just roam the countryside knocking down buildings and structures that stand in their way. But under the Building Act 1984, a 6 weeks notice must also be given to the local authority's building control department before commencing demolition. Fair enough, but could that notice not be part of the planning permission? The Health and Safety at Work Act 1974 mandates employers to ensure health and safety of employers and the public during construction and demolition activities. But placed on top of that are the CDM regs of 2015, which require proper planning and management of health and safety risks. Two regulations that at least partly achieve the same thing, surely. But even two is not enough. In addition to those specific health and safety rules, a contractor will be expected to produce and abide by a set of RAMs, risk assessment and method statements, to identify hazards and outline risk management strategies during demolition. Before demolition can commence, an asbestos survey must be conducted, and if asbestos is present, only licensed contractors can carry out its removal, following strict guidelines set out by the Health and Safety Executive. But meanwhile, the Control of Substances Hazardous to Health, or COSH, 2002, requires assessment and control of exposure to hazardous substances, ensuring safe handling and disposal. So we have a regulation for asbestos and another one for hazardous substances. Is asbestos not considered hazardous? But we're still not done. Demolition projects impacting public roads or footpaths must implement traffic management plans to ensure the safe movement of vehicles and pedestrians around the site. The Control of Pollution Act 1974 regulates noise and vibration from construction sites, requiring measures to minimise impact on nearby residents and businesses, while the Environmental Protection Act 1990 addresses statutory nuisances, including dust and emissions from construction activities, necessitating control measures to prevent public health issues. And this isn't just red tape. This is red tape woven into an impenetrable wall. That wall requires constant monitoring and policing by the authorities, and it requires demolition and construction companies and workers to have an encyclopedic knowledge of the law, way beyond that of your average solicitor. And that's all before we even get to the regulatory minefield that is sustainability and the environment. The Environmental Protection Act 1990 establishes a duty of care for waste producers, mandating responsible handling, storage, and disposal of waste with proper documentation and use of licensed carriers. The Waste Regulations 2011 require proper classification and management of construction and demolition waste, including maintaining waste transfer notes and appropriate waste codes. And while they've not been a legal requirement since 2013, site waste management plans are still considered best practice for documenting waste volumes, management methods, and recycling targets. And on top of that, there is the Control of Pollution Act 1974 that regulates noise and vibration. No, I've done that one. Ignore that. I'll save you doing the maths. There are a dozen items of legislation to read, absorb, understand, communicate, control, and adhere to. 12 regulations or guidances heaped upon each other, many of them overlapping, many of them contradictory. 12 potential cracks through which an unsuspecting demolition company or a worker might fall. A more cynical person might suggest that's precisely the point, that this Jenga tower of regulation has been arranged to fall upon the unsuspecting. To make matters worse, this all runs contrary to the demolition way. In the world of demolition, Let me do that again. In the world of demolition, we tear down the outdated and the outmoded relics of the past to make way for something new, something better suited to the world of today and tomorrow. Yes, we do salvage some elements of the past and carry them forward to the new, but only if and when appropriate. The earliest of those regulations that I've just mentioned dates back to 1974, when Harold Wilson was the UK Prime Minister. Since then, we've had 11 different prime ministers, and Lord alone knows how many government ministers and cabinet reshuffles. And as each of them has come and gone, the swamp of regulation has grown deeper and more contaminated. They could have introduced a single overarching item of legislation in consultation with demolition practitioners. They could have taken an even bigger shortcut and introduced a regulated licensing scheme containing clear guidelines on demolition processes and procedures. They did neither of those things. Instead, successive governments has just piled one regulation on top of another. And the effect on the industry is much the same as the effect on my father-in-law. They may have cured one problem, but the cure has resulted in a serious and debilitating headache. There you are. That's my rant for the day. 12 items of legislation, and only, off the top of my head, I reckon only 3 of them, possibly 4, actually mention the word demolition. A lot of the legislation that applies in the demolition field was actually designed for the much bigger construction industry. But yeah, 12 items of legislation, and you'll have local planning details, local guidances, national guidances issued by the likes of the NFDC and ARCA, all of which you're expected to learn, understand, and abide by. How does that make any sense? If you go back, not that long actually, I think every new government, in actual fact, every new government arrives and says that they will improve efficiency, that they will cut red tape and drain the swamp of regulation. And what do? They take a regulation and put it on top of another regulation. And then the next lot arrive, and what do? They do exactly the same thing. So you've just got this build up and build up and build up. And it's no surprise and no coincidence that while all of those things have been piling up and heaping up and getting more and more complex and convoluted, productivity in both demolition and construction has gone down. I wonder why. I wonder why. We now have entire departments. When you think about some of the bigger demolition contractors in the UK, the Eris, the McGee's, the Kelprays, the DSMs, those level of companies, they now actually have their own compliance, legal compliance departments. And we're not talking about one bloke that looks over the latest set of RAMs. We're talking about entire departments whose job purely and entirely is to make sure that they don't fall foul of regulations in some way or another. How does that make any sense? I mean, I guess if someone were to say, yes, that was all part of the plan, that was a job creation scheme, that was, we decided there wasn't enough white-collared workers working in the demolition construction sphere, so we invented a load of regulations, and then you would need to employ people to maintain and abide by those regulations. If somebody said that, you go, well done. Well done. Well thought out. That's a fantastic plan. That's not the case. The actual case is, and when you look at some of the stuff for waste and sustainability, we're in a time and a place and an age at the moment where sustainability is an unbeatable foe. Anybody says anything to protect the environment, protect the atmosphere, protect the green belt, and you cannot argue against it, because you'll be seen as some sort of Philistine, a Luddite, somebody looking to destroy the world. And so you can have an environmental regulation on another environmental regulation on top of another, and nobody will say, hang on, should we not just combine all of these? When you think about RAMs, one of the things that I've found really interesting, maybe 10, 15 years ago, it got to the point where RAMs were like War and Peace. I think we got into the frame of mind where demolition contractors in particular were producing sets of RAMs that were, I think they were designed partly to impress and partly to overwhelm. Not here's our RAMs, here's 10 sheets of paper or 4 sheets of paper. Here's a whacking great document, a bloody great tome. Maybe it was made that big because nobody wanted anyone to read it. It was, well, you asked for RAMs, here they are, here's everything. One of the things I found interesting from this industry's point of view is that the industry has gone away from that. In order to make those RAMs understandable, particularly to workers, they've gradually whittled it down and whittled it down and whittled it down to the very point that now a set of RAMs might only be 2 or 3 pages long. Much of it might be pictorial, so that everyone can just at a glance, okay, yeah, we know what we're doing, we know what to do, we know what to do, and not what to do, what not to do. I'll make sense in a moment. Just bear with me. It's been a long day. 10:39. We've whittled it down, and yet that which we're expected to abide by has gradually got bigger and bigger and bigger. Each one of those items of legislation that I mentioned, 12 in all, but there are others. All of those are available. You can download them or you can go and buy them. And imagine the office of a demolition contractor, top shelf, just rammed with regulations. Seriously, how are you expected to know all of that? As I say, particularly when some of it overlaps and some of it actually contradicts. How are we expected to keep track of all of that? And yet you could resolve all of that if you introduced a licensing scheme that laid out very, very clearly, here is what a demolition contractor can and cannot do. Here is what they must and must not do. Literally setting a framework of demolition belongs in this box here. It must not stray outside that box. And then everyone knows where they stand. And if they do go outside that box, then the authorities have every right to clamp down on them. Not only would that reduce the level of legislation that we're suffering from, it would also take out the cowboys from the industry. Those that could not or would not abide by those rules have their license revoked. They're gone, goodbye, never to be seen again, and the industry standard goes up and up and up. Takashi 2057 says, "How are you? I'm doing absolutely fantastic. Looking forward to my lunch today. We're off to see. We're not off to see. We're off to Rick Stein's place in Barnes, about, I don't know, 40 minutes from where I am at the moment. Not going to go all the way to Padstow. That's quite a long way to go for a day, but it is one of my wife's favourites, and that's where we're going for her birthday. So yes, if you're in Barnes, and wave at me through the window. There you are. Dan says, that's a conversation I had the other day. I went on site for an induction. Who actually reads the RAMs on that site? As I have managers going mad at me for actually going through RAMs thoroughly. And I think that's... Let's talk about RAMs, but I think what Dan has just said about RAMs is even worse when you get up the chain with actual regulations. If I wrote an article and placed it online, and it was just, I don't know, 4,000 words, no line spacing, no paragraphs, just 4,000 words, just continuous, I'd be very surprised if anyone would bother to read it. It's too long, looks too heavy, can't be asked, got better things to do in my life. I'll go and read something shorter, punchier, something I can get my head around. And that is one of the points with RAMs. If your RAMs are so detailed, so complex, so lengthy, nobody is going to read them. And if they're not reading them, how on earth are they going to abide by them? And then if you extend that up to the regulations, not only are the regulations highly detailed, highly prescriptive, highly complex, a lot of them are written in language that only a lawyer or a solicitor would possibly understand. How on earth are we at an age, 2025, where we've got a booklet on whatever it might be, sustainability or carbon emissions or dust and vibration control, and even somebody that is an expert in their field, in the demolition or construction field, would look at it and go, "The fuck does that mean?" Surely it should be as straightforward as, dust, for example. Here's your limits. You exceed those limits, there'll be a penalty. How hard is that? And, lots of demolition sites, most demolition sites these days have some sort of dust monitoring. If that exceeds that level that we've prescribed, there's a penalty involved. Exactly the same for noise, exactly the same for vibration. How hard can that be? Here's your limit, don't exceed it. If you do, penalty. There you are. One line. And everyone knows exactly where they stand. They thought I was only wasting my time in reply. I'm looking at my rights if accidents occur. And what's the point? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, don't forget, one of the reasons that you are inducted, one of the reasons you go through the RAMS process, one of the reasons that you do Toolbox Talks is because the company is covering their ass. So if you go and do something stupid, be it deliberately or through a lapse of concentration, something that they covered with you in the RAMs, in Toolbox Talk or pre-start briefing or whatever it might be, if you do something outside of that, they can go, well, we told him. We told him. We look clearly here. Look, here's his signature at the bottom of a piece of paper. We showed him this on the 17th of July. If he turned his machine over on the 18th of July, we're in the clear. Entirely his fault because we told him not to do that thing. That's what they're there for, as much as actual safety. This is the thing, people are rushed out to site, not actually understanding the regs and safety issues on site. People sign them as quick as possible. Yeah, let's be absolutely honest. When you've been through an induction, Toolbox Talk, or whatever it might be, and you're expected to sign, there you go. I'm done. I've done my thing. How many people are actually taking any notice of that? And just going back a very quick stage, we are in an industry with a pretty poor level of literacy, to the point where we've digested and condensed some of our industry training into touchscreen tests, which are largely, or some of them are largely, pictorial, because we know full well that a lot of people out there in this industry, demolition and construction, are not much with the reading and the writing. Some are good, some are not so good, some are out of their depth. So we've done that with the training. You can also get assistance with your training in order to, if you can't read a computer screen, or maybe you've got some sort of dyslexia or some sort of learning difficulty, you can be helped through to gain your competence card. What happens when you get to this situation that Dan is describing here? You've already got your card, and you've had some assistance with that, but you've now gone through an induction. Did you fully understand that? You've now gone through a toolbox talk. Did you fully understand that? You put your name at the bottom of a set of RAMs. Did you fully understand that? Is anybody asking? And while we're about it, and I'm not saying this in an even remotely racist way, we have a lot of migrant workers on our sites. How well are they grasping the contents of a set of RAMs, and also their legal obligation in abiding by those RAMs? Are they just, writing their name at the bottom of the piece of paper and hoping for the best? Has anybody explained it to them? Here you are. That's why I thought it's been quite clever, actually. Bearing in mind the story started with the prescriptions of my father-in-law and ended up with where we are now. That was why I called it, or it will be called when it goes live in about 10 minutes, an overdose of regulation. That's what it's called. This is where foreign workers don't grasp this or understand the requirements. Yeah. And listen, as I say, I'm not being racist here, but imagine that. You might be a really, really good, let's say, an excavator operator. You've arrived from Romania. I don't know why Romania, but you arrive from Romania. You jump in feet first, and you're clearly very good at what you do. Clearly, I mean, you demonstrably, even your British colleagues who had a bit of a question mark over you to begin with are looking at you now thinking, yeah, he's good. That fella's good. But something happens during the day. He's been through the same induction as you. He's been through the same health and safety talk. He's been through the same toolbox talk. He's been through the same set of RAMs. Something's happened. His fault. And it's his fault because his English is either non-existent or nowhere near good enough to understand a legal document that he has already signed. Yeah. Is that fair? And again, going back to the point I made about the way that regulations have been piled upon each other. If you are a cynic, and I can be that way, you might even wonder, has that house of cards been arranged so that when something goes wrong, the whole lot collapses and we can get a really good prosecution out of it? Is that what it is? David Davis has said, overseas workers mind the gates, not good for much else. I do not agree with that in any way, shape, or form, which is why I'm not putting that comment on the screen. But good morning, David. Before I go into induction, I always say I'll be reading your RAMs through to reply. It'll take 2 hours. So my is so what I need to understand the complications, details of the site. Yeah, absolutely. Listen, if your employer, direct or otherwise, if your employer is requiring you to put your signature at the bottom of a piece of paper to cover their ass, it's only right and proper that you should take the time to read that to cover your own ass. Surely that makes perfect sense, doesn't it? And if a company, and Dan, I know exactly how this works, if a company is handing you a set of RAMs and saying to you, oh, never mind, you read it, just sign the fucking thing, will you get to work? That's an alarm bell right there. There's a red flag, surely. Do you not think? Anyway, people, that will do us for today, I think. I am about to go off and get myself all tarted up to go and have a nice bit of lunch with my birthday girl of a wife. I'll be back tomorrow for yet more of the same. I don't know what we're talking about tomorrow. It'll be some stuff and nonsense, I expect. Until then, everybody have a fantastic day. Look after yourselves. Don't sign anything you shouldn't. Dan says, I've had that. That's where I go into the RAMs. Yeah, you should go into the RAMs. They're not just there for decoration. That they are, they are a legal document. To handle with care is what I would suggest. Anyway, people, go and have a good day. Be careful what you sign. Make sure you read it thoroughly. In business, in life, just whatever. I'll be back tomorrow, 10 a.m. Till then, everybody, have a fantastic day. See you soon.